have district staff, and I do see Mr. William Smith on as well. I don't see Miss Boatwright.
She says she'll be in less than 5 minutes. She just texted me.
Okay, I'll try to slow move it. If we could get started this morning with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and
and
justice.
justice for all.
Okay.
Thank you, Robin.
Come on.
It's Friday. The technology,
Yeah,
technology is moving slow.
everything is moving slow.
That's all right. I'm fine with it. So the next item is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion, please, to approve today's agenda? I believe there may be changes that Robin emailed to us. So
There's not changes. It's just something was not included is what I was letting you know.
oh, I thought we weren't going to be able to do item 3.
Oh, you're right. I forgot. Okay. I forgot about that part too.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the agenda with the edits suggested by Mrs. Cushingberry.
Yes, sir. So that would be for the removal of item 3.
Yeah. The discussion on rubric for Health Advisory Committee.
Yes. So I will second that and go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye as well.
Vote passes unanimously, I believe.
Yep.
Yes, sir. Do we have any public comments today, Ms. Cushingberry?
No, ma'am.
All right.
I am typing kind of fast to put the removal in the motion.
We'll wait for you. No worries.
Kind of slowing things down. No public comments. All right, I'm ready for the minutes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of, let's see.
October 11th?
Yes, ma'am. It is the approval of the October 11th committee meeting minutes. However, the date that is on the draft says October 2nd. So I want to make sure before
it should be the 11th, so I will correct the draft.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the committee meeting minutes that are shown on the agenda as October the 11th, 2023.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I'll second that.
Sounds like vote, I think.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye as well. Robin, you good?
I am trying to find them where they're not attached. They're not attached?
There was the one that you click on, at least when I clicked on it in Diligent, it was dated October 2nd. And I believe we did have.
It was October the 11th, and I should.
Okay, so I believe it's just needs to be updated on there.
Okay.
We did actually, Robin, we did have a meeting on the 2nd.
But we had already approved those at the 11th. Those were already approved at the 11th committee meeting.
I think we're good to go then on that one. And item 3, we are not covering today. We will revisit item 3, which was the discussion on rubric for Health Advisory Committee. So we will come back to that. The next item is procedure for policy revision proposals. And this was
Ingrid's. and I don't have anything to put in there. So I know this was a topic that she was wanting to discuss.
Yes, ma'am. And can you pull up for us, Robin, the board policies to display?
Yep.
And we can go to what the current policy is for that.
Okay.
Um,
Let's see. Policy.
I'll pull it up too over here. So
Is it a? It's not an OE, so I don't.
It's a GC, I believe.
Right.
I
What
used
do
to.
you think? GC governing, and here comes Ingrid.
Okay, wonderful.
Trying to think of where it would be under.
I think it's GC2. I'm trying to double check.
Let me click on here. All right, here's GC2. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so it is GC2, 15 and 16, I believe, as well. 17 and somewhat of 18.
You see it?
Yes.
So, Ms. Boatwright, thank you for joining us. Happy Friday. We are talking about the item, I believe, that you had wanted us to go over, which is on the agenda today as, let's see, it's
procedure for policy revision proposals.
Yes, procedure for policy revision proposals, which is currently covered under GC2 14 through 18 somewhat.
Yeah.
So
my question is this. So what I feel like has happened multiple times in my 3 years on the board is it gets put to policy, then policy reads it, then it has then there's this big, does it go to committee? And then, and it bounces around, and it doesn't seem like anybody's oh, no, here's the process. And sometimes it can really sort of bounce around indefinitely. So I was thinking we should have some sort of standardize. If someone wants to have the policy look at something, what happens? Is it how many readings, et cetera, et cetera. It seems to me like it's always kind of not making it up, but sort of crisis management approach to how that gets finalized. So I was trying to catch up here because I don't think that's addressed, right?
Yeah, so if there is, it's addressed in these three kind of separately, depending on how they come about. So we can revise or amend a policy during, someone could bring up a motion and say, well, I think we should revise our policy, or we can temporarily vote to suspend them. And that has happened in the past where we've suspended a policy during a issue of, heightened incident. So in those instances where it happens at a board meeting, it's somewhat different. And then it covers their inclusion in the policy manual under 18, where those motions will come to the policy committee on a quarterly basis to then be codified, essentially. And then the policy committee itself can bring forward policy changes as well as other committees. But you're correct in that there is no standard operating procedure in the sense that a committee may have a policy change or proposal, and then how does that then come about? Does that go through policy committee and then come forward to the full board? How does that work?
So I think it also really goes to when we want to change an OE, which is really that's what our policy is, right? That's where I think we get into some confusion, like adding the word volunteer, right? So that was a motion, as I recall, Robin, you're better about this, and I came out of operations, went to policy, then there was some confusion. It went to the board or went back to operations, and then it went, and that's where I feel like we're kind of missing a piece.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I'm trying to look at the GC5 on board committees to see because we did take
Mhm.
action on this. It's under GC 4A, Board Governance Policy Changes.
Yeah,
Amended motion that
Right
policy.
here.
Yes.
but I don't think we followed that. I think that, and you're right. I mean, if I read that the way it says to be read, that basically we, the policy committee, we vet and insert, and then it's brought to the board for approval by the appropriate committee. Well, what's the appropriate committee? Policy committee or operations? Policy committee, and I think that is because what I've seen happen, it takes a long time to insert the word volunteers, and it came up in front of the board like twice, and it went to operations twice. So amended that policy proposal brought to the board for approval by the appropriate committee. What does that mean?
So I
Can I-
think appropriate committee was supposed to mean, if it was finance and they had a policy change for finance, they bring it forward to the full board for its first reading. And to be formally vetted at the board level.
Right.
And then once the board as a whole votes on approving that as a policy, then it comes to us, similar to how it would do under, I believe it's GC 218 for inclusion into the manual.
Can I, weigh
Yes, sir.
in?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So I think a couple of solutions might be before us. One is to, on a somewhat regular basis after a new board is sworn in, that these types of things are discussed. Because as I read these different items, they all remain final authority to the whole board. And I think that's what happened. I think we never got the energy of a majority until it went through a couple of iterations. I personally don't have a problem with that, because I think it worked out. But I would, I guess I'm proposing that based on what I've read and what I'm reading now, I had not read the GC 5 item 4A before. I think that the current guidelines actually show how this should play out, and it appears, without without my knowing it, that it played out pretty close to what the guidelines currently are.
Yes, Miss Robin.
What Ingrid is referring to, I think one of the issues with operations is because part of it, the reason why I went back to operations twice is because there's operations HR, operations facility. And that was one of the issues when it went back to operations, because they had the volunteer thing had to come through the HR portion of operations. And so and that volunteer was bounced between communications and HR. So it was under a communications OE, which needed to be moved to HR, and it was bounced back twice because we didn't have HR's input or the back and forth.
Well, and I think let's just walk through this because to Mr.
Okay.
Dallas's point, I think that what I've noticed is over 3 years, we've never done it the same way twice. There's just, and that's where I get like confused, and it does tend to like make simple fixes take months.
Long time. Mm-hmm.
So let's just say operations wants to make a change to one of the operation OE. So what I'm reading then is that based on this motion, operations committee would have a recommendation to the full board to propose this policy change. The board, if the board approved the policy change in the form of a motion for the standing. So I guess then it would have to be that the board approves the standing policy committee to legally vet and insert into policy manual. So if I'm reading this correctly, and I don't think we've ever done it this way in my 3 years, Robin, if someone like operations or technology or academics wants to make a change and the board says yes, they would then make a motion for the standing policy committee to vet and insert. And then we're done, right? Then that's it.
Well, what we've been doing is the board makes a motion and we have to go through 2 readings. There has to be 2 readings.
Right.
And so it comes back. And then I think we went to the policy for them to say yes, and we changed the wording to put it in, and to say this action was taken on this day.
So would the 2 readings occur before the emotions of, so in other words, would you get 2 readings before the board approved it? Because it seems to me like once the board's approved it, and this makes sense to me, once the board as a whole has approved the policy change, then all the policy committee has to do is vet and insert.
Right.
But we seem to have, the motion gets approved, we vet, we insert, then it goes back to the board, sometimes back to the committee. And that's where I feel like all of a sudden 3 months later, we're still talking about adding a word to a policy manual. And then, so I think that, to me, if I'm reading this, we need to figure out where that 2 reading occurs. After the policy committee has vetted and inserted, or before it's approved to be vetted and inserted. And Dallas, Mr. Dallas is on a bunch of these boards that he might know better processes than I.
I don't know the process. I recall that the volunteer issue was something that there were lots of disparate points of view on it. And that's what sort of, to me, tied it up. In addition to people not knowing these items that we've just reviewed. So I go back to maybe informing, maybe just sending out, what currently exists would be beneficial, because I think once everyone got comfortable with it, I think, it came to resolution.
And if I can add, and I'd have to go back to this June 23rd, 2020 meeting, but I may have been a maker or a seconder on that motion. My understanding and recollection was that committees would, and the way that it reads to me is that the appropriate committee brings forward the policy proposals to the full board for them to approve. And it needs to be in the form of a motion from a committee report. And then once it is approved, the policy committee, their sole responsibility is to legally vet it and insert it in the manual. It's not supposed to be modified unless, there's a legal reason to modify language. So that's my understanding and recollection from it. Now that's 3 years ago. So,
when does the 2 readings come in effect? Before the policy get it or after?
So it would be, the 2 readings would be before policy committee gets it.
And that's what we kind of generally been following.
Yeah, I know that there has been, like the instance that we're talking about with the volunteers and whatnot. I know that did bounce around, and I recall that there was HR was merging some things with communications, and so it was a little bit messy.
Correct.
That was and Mr. Smith's hands up, but that, just real quickly, that was just an example I pulled up because it was just the most recent one. But we've had other ones where it's been, that's not the only one that bounced around. That's why I was saying I wanted like a clean process. So
yeah, I'm thinking some type of just descriptive document that could go out to board members or be included in the handbook, because we do have the ability to modify the handbook without having to go through readings. Something that could be drafted up that kind of points to these different policies and informs people of the how-to for policy changes. Mr. Dallas, I think that's kind of what you're proposing.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that would be a good solution to make it clean for people to understand, how these things how we can use the policies to amend, modify, suspend, yada, yada, the policies. Mr. Smith, thank you for your patience.
Yes, I go with what you pretty much were saying, and I know that at one point, basically, the policy committee was going over all the policies and making sure that they align with our OEs. But for the most part, I believe that anytime that there was a policy change, that once the change can happen, it would go to the policy committee to look over and make sure the policy change was correct. That's my understanding of it.
Okay.
And I think we still need just clarification on when the 2 readings comes in, because I feel like that creates some of the confusion. If it's before the board approves, because to me, what it sounds like the intent of this thing is once the board has approved it, policy committee just does it. We legally vet it and insert it. So then the 2 readings, so amendment by policy brought to the board for approval, we should put something in there that's where the 2 meetings come back. And once that's done, once the board has approved it twice, policy committee just has its marching orders, and it doesn't come back to the board or back to the committee for further input.
Robin, if you have the
Mhm.
ability to grab that June 23rd, 2020, the voting record of that, I just had an idea of a possible solution to clean up the language so it's a little more clear that
Can
it,
I, oops,
yes, sir, go ahead.
um, I, when you say vet and insert, I think board members probably would feel more comfortable at least seeing what it looks like. Um, so that they know the board's intent was carried out with great discipline. And it could be as simple as the legal people saying this has been changed. But if you recall on one of those particular points, we thought it was pretty simple. And when it came back, it was something that incorporated more change than originally envisioned. So I think the two readings should be the approval of the full board. And after it has been vetted and inserted, I think that would be a little bit easier and ensure everybody's in agreement.
Yeah,
I think overall it's pretty strong right now, and I think it's an educational opportunity for us, to be honest. Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, I agree that the two readings should be at the board level, and the legally vet and insert is really there just to, because we may as a board, 11 of us, I don't know if any of us are attorneys. Well, no, maybe Miss Angela is an attorney, correct? So but she's not our attorney. So we do have that legally vetting part in there because policy committee has a legal staff member. So that's, I
Okay,
think,
so are we all agreed then on where the two readings will come from?
yeah, and that's why I had Robin bringing up this voting record to see who voted yes on, there it is, the amended motion that the ad hoc coherent governance policy committee has, and that's not it.
No, trying to figure,
It might be under,
finance operation.
but the purpose for having her pull this up is to see if I was on of the yes votes. And if that is the case, I could always bring the vote back forward to the board for clarification. And I did want to also probably go back when I do that, if you all are comfortable, look at the video record or the transcript record, just to ensure that the intention that was there was for the full board to have those two readings and then for it to go to policy committee. I want to make sure that was everybody's understanding. If I was on the positive side of things, I can certainly bring it forward and it wouldn't be a major change to policy. It would just be a changed motion. So that could be then inserted where it is presently in the policy manual. Does that make sense?
What was it, GC 5? What
Oh, presently it's under GC 54A, I believe.
5, 4, 5, 4, GC 5, 4. Okay. So the things in the highlighted, the board, all policies should be recommended and approved by the board. So, so
Ms. Boatright, do you understand what I was driving towards there?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I
I
think,
just as long as I don't care what the process is, to be honest with you, it's just I want it to be clear, consistent, and as efficient as possible.
yeah, and I can see how 4A in the way that that motion was worded can lead to confusion. So I do want to definitely make sure that it's clear. And then to Mr. Dallas's point as well, maybe getting something in the handbook that is a policy changes for dummies, not calling you not calling you a dummy.
Don't worry, I've been called that worse.
So I'm not seeing it on here, but
I'm going back to on the 20 at this meeting. So I don't see where I'm looking at the motions.
I'm sort of wondering if it might be even possibly more efficient to identify possible changes in the I think you said the handbook, Madam Chair,
Mhm.
and show what the understanding is and how the current interpretation is, which the final two readings should be for the full board.
Right, yeah,
After and then that way everybody can be comfortable with that. It illuminates what the process is now and will be, and you don't have to go back and make a lot of policy changes because I could see that being iteratively difficult.
yeah, and that's why I was hoping to just modify this motion or clarify the motion with the board. So I would do those both in tandem.
All right, so it looks like this, I have the wrong date of the motion.
Wait, hold on. Where was the standing committee list? Because that's another thing I was wondering about. What are our standing committees?
Our standing committees are technology, technology is a standing committee now, but it's finance, operations.
That's Horry County that Horry County, yeah, Horry County, right? Okay.
No, this is ours. It's just the heading. It's not, these are ours, but out here I had never changed the document.
Where does that list of standing committees exist in our current policy manual?
Are all committees except ad hoc standing committees? That was my understanding.
Wait, go back.
Right there.
So what is that?
The six standing committee,
Resources?
the six standing committees were finance, facilities, technology, human resources, curriculum instruction, which is now academics and policy.
But we don't have a standing human resources committee.
No, because they moved human resources under operations. So operations is a standing committee, and human resources falls under operations now.
Is this in our current policy manual, this number 4?
That listing?
Let me go back to number 4.
No, it's not like
I have never seen that particular document. So did that not make it over, or did that get voted out, or what?
It got condensed.
It got condensed.
Because the standing committees have changed over time. So we just changed it to say, okay. we may have, it's permissible for us to have standing committees. And then we also have other temporary. Because I think if I recall back then technology was just starting.
Exactly.
So that's why that was one of the impetuses.
So,
the way I developed a list of the committees so I can know who was on what committee in the early days, and including Beaufort Jasper ACE, there are 9. I don't count that, and I don't count agenda setting.
Right.
And then if you take out ad hoc, which I think is an ad hoc committee, then that takes you back to the original 6.
So here, this is our current policy right here.
Mm-hmm.
All board committees except a standing committee are considered to be ad hoc or temporary. So we don't have them listed in this.
Nope.
Just that we
going to bring up.
We may have them.
And wise results in ad hoc, but that's a whole other conversation. I don't want to get into that today.
Well, I think that might be one of the agenda discussion of board. It's kind of a nice transition.
Yeah. Well, that's why I got intrigued, because when I was looking, I'm like, that was one of my questions. So,
okay, well, let's transition into item number 5 for today, which is discussion of board committee roles. As long as everybody's good kind of with the path forward on the policy revision side, I'll bring forward a report to the board and at our next meeting to let them know what we're planning to do, which will require probably another meeting of us to draft something for insertion into the handbook, as well as showing that to the full board and then potentially modifying that June motion to make it a little bit more clear on that the intention behind that was for the full board to review policy revisions that come out of committee for 2 readings. And after those 2 readings, then it goes to policy committee for legally vetting and insertion.
Now, let me bring up a thornier proposal. We do, but Robin, back me if I'm wrong, because I'm, my memory. We did have a motion for the policy committee to revise public comments, correct?
Correct.
So we legally vetted it. and insert into the, and proposed this. So then we came back with a proposal, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then that proposal got voted down.
Correct.
The original motion still stands. This is
Correct.
where I feel like we don't have enough detail to sort of understand, because now I'm like, we still have the motion to have the like, so technically that motion is still out there saying that policy committee is supposed to revise. So when so then
But you did. The
we did.
policy, yeah, the policy did their job.
Correct. And under this format, what Rachel's talking about, we'd be done and we don't bring it back. Now we brought it back and it was rejected. So now, but we still have the original motion. So you see, this is where I'm like, I don't want to spend I don't want to have meetings over the same things over and over and over again. B, there needs to be a process that's standardized that makes sense for something as simple as adding the word volunteer and something that's as complex as rewriting, whatever GC thing, because this is the problem we're running into. And now we're going to have another board meeting, then I'll go to a work session. And then, this is where I would like to see, I think we should look at that language a little bit more and think it through in terms of, if we get a directive from the board, do we just do it? Or is the directive from the board? Yeah, that's where you get the motion, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would say the policy committee to look at potential insertions, or could it be like the board can vote to either make a motion to legally vet and insert, or to review and bring back?
Yeah, I don't know if it needs to be that complicated though, because if the board originally with the public comments, one that we do have to dispose of and figure that one out. My personal suggestion would be that the victors on that original motion that said policy committee was going to review public comment, that they revive the motion and we figure out if the full board's intention is still for the policy committee to find something that everyone can agree on. If they don't, if the full board doesn't agree with that sentiment anymore, then it's moot, it's done. But I think we need to bring up that motion or have that on an agenda setting discussion for that to be revived and discussed at the full board level.
Right, but under this current thing, basically, we should not have brought it back.
Can I weigh in?
Yes, sir, please do.
This is absolute insanity.
Correct.
I got to be honest with you. Why do you create a school district? You create it to educate and prepare your kids for the future. We spend so much time
100%
over minutia, and no one really knows all of it. And it demotivates. It demotivates. We need to be focusing these lengthy conversations on how do we raise scores? How do we raise the starting salaries for the graduates of our institution? This goes on ad infinitum.
Yeah, there's always going to be some tweak or change that could be made to policies. It's really
a living document.
I agree with the sentiment, Mr. Dallas. It is minutia.
Well, and this is the sentiment that's driving me to talk about this, because how much time did we waste on inserting the word volunteer because we don't have a streamlined, standardized policy form? And this, unfortunately, for better or worse, the policy committee is where you have this minutia discussion. But the point of policy is to set up something where you don't waste time in board business meetings or in committee meetings over minutia, but you have a path forward if something wants to change. Because that's my whole thing, is I just thought it's embarrassing to me when we're in a full board business meeting that is being live streamed and people are tuning in to talk about academics, and we're debating the word volunteer. Okay. So that's the point of this.
If I may.
Yes, sir.
To me, that is democracy, and that needs to be visible and that needs to be transparent. I have no problem with that, because ultimately the majority of the board is going to make their will known, and then we lock and load and we abide by it. But I mean, you could go through all of these policies and you could find a volunteer word equivalent that would generate the same amount of time. Our raison d'etre is to prepare kids to be successful in our society. And the amount of time spent on that, to me, seems inordinately small.
I would agree with you on that. I think the one thing though, and the reason why personally I'm very passionate about the policies and why I don't I don't mind some of these lengthy conversations at the policy committee level, because we operate by policies as a board. And so if these aren't clean, if these aren't understood by new board members, we got some massive problems. And then when we do have those conversations at the full board level, it goes on for way too long. But I agree, they do need to be seen by the public. People need to see us doing the work and see us having those awkward conversations. But let's see if we can try to get through this meeting today and bring forward some changes that are gonna hopefully make us operate a little bit more effectively. Yes, Ms. Cushenberry.
So if we take public comments and walk it through this process, the policy committee has done their work. They took it to the full board for vote. The full board did not approve what the policy committee has done. So isn't it left at the full board to determine since they didn't approve the proposal, it's up to the full board to say what they want, correct? Wouldn't it be put? So the policy committee followed this step that we have that's in front of us. There was a motion for them to go for this committee to do the work. The committee has done the work. They have presented 2 proposals. The first proposal they said, the full board said, no, go back, do more work. The committee went back, did more work, brought their second proposal to the work session. It was voted down. The committee has done this work, so it's really left in the lap of the full board for them to give direction of, you didn't like the proposals, now what is it that you want? Correct? But you followed these steps.
Yes, I would agree with that assessment that it is at the full board, and it's really the board officers who now need to decide if that's going to be disposed of, or of any of the victors on that original motion to send it to policy committee to revive the motion. Those are operationally, those are the only 2 ways that I see for the matter to continue to proceed.
So how in looking at GC 5 and 4, what would we change in this to make, using that example of the public comments, how will we change that to make it cleaner? Or can it be?
I would ask Ms. Boatwright. I don't think that there is any necessary change in that instance, personally. Ms. Boatwright, do you have any?
I agree with that. I see no need for changing.
I see Ms. Boatwright, if you don't mind, I see Mr. Smith's hand is up.
Well, I thought it said I'll leave. Y'all already said it already. Thank you. My bad.
Thank you, sir. No worries. Ms. Boatwright, did you want to propose a change to GC5 for A to potentially deal with instances like that where there is a policy change request made to the policy committee?
Looks like we might have lost her.
We might have lost her. Okay.
If Ingrid, if you're on there, you're still muted.
Oh, she might have froze.
Yeah.
And just
let me text.
For clarification purposes too, and I do not recall where this is in policies. I'd have to go look, but I believe there are multiple ways by which items can be remanded to committee. One being from, the board chair, the other being from board action. And then committees are also permitted under their charge to review items that they deem within their scope of work, and the scope is approved at the beginning of the committee's formation. So just so other board members are aware of those three items.
Ingrid says she had a work call. She'll be right back.
Okay,
She's
it happens.
Let's see.
So that might be those
I'm-
three.
Okay, sorry about that, guys.
Okay.
Okay. Ingrid, were you able to hear the question?
Yeah.
Oops. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm sorry, my volume thing had an issue. All right.
No worries. So
Trying to my office.
what I was asking is on GC 54A, in when thinking of the instance of public comments and how that was routed, do you believe that there is a need for a change to GC 54A to address that?
My thing is mostly just as long as I understand so that we don't get in the doom spiral of committee, board, committee, board, committee, board, that there is a clear path. I don't particularly care which way it goes. I think that there is confusion for me still on the two, when the two readings have to occur. Because to me, the way this motion reads is that the board votes, policy does, and the end. The board, has two readings, votes to make the change, policy committee. So really, I am completely satisfied with that. That hasn't been what we've been doing. And so if it's just a question of getting clarification out that the board is at, and I guess to the extent the board would have to say in the example of public comments, we want you to change it to include these things. Because, and opposed to, why don't you take a look at it and come up with something. And so however you guys want to do it. And if no one wants to change it, that's fine. I will say though, I don't like spending time on these policy things. And I agree that they distract. And I think I have been pretty firm on trying to cut down the amount of distractions because I feel like the public in a large sense finds us fairly irrelevant because we spend a lot of time looking at, listening to comments on, different books and, the same kind of things. So to that vein, whatever gets us there the fastest is completely fine with me. But I would point out the example recently of when a small policy change completely derailed an entire Congress when they allowed one vote to vacate a chair. So these small policy changes can have massive impacts on how we govern. So whatever you guys want to do is fine with me. And as long as it's clear, and if there's a education piece that can go to new board members, I'd be hugely in favor of that because I was quite confused when I first came on the board. In fact, I'm still confused as to how policy changes happen.
Okay. Mr. Dallas, do you have anything else to add?
I've already said my thoughts.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Well, in that case, and I'm not sure, Ms. Boatwright, if you were on for the part, but I went over the three ways by which an item can come to committee, which I'm not presently seeing that in here under board committees. I remember it being in a prior iteration, but my understanding of the three ways that an item can make it onto a board committee agenda essentially is by assignment of the board chair, by board action, or it falling within the scope of the individual board committee. So those are the three ways that I'm aware of. And so I think that is how the original public comments item came to policy because it was assigned by the full board. So if that, I don't know if that brings any clarity or maybe we need to review that aspect because I'm not seeing it right now. I feel like it's in here somewhere.
I love that.
Each committee, that was in one of our originals, and I think at one time it got deleted, but it sounds like it should be put back.
Yeah, Robin, if you could, do you mind taking a look for that original language so that I can review and see when that might have dropped off or how that may have happened?
Okay.
So I think that's an important part to committee's responsibilities. Awesome.
Ways. And I am going to check the June 23rd, 2020 date because that date might be wrong with that actual motion. So I'm going to verify since we looked at it and I didn't see that motion in there.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Working
So
through.
then, if everybody's good with that, and in the interest of time, if we're good to move along, we've still got some, we will have to probably revisit both of these agenda items at another meeting, and that falls into our next conversation, which is future meeting dates. I would like to look at the calendar and see if there is a way to do something perhaps on the 27th.
Of November.
Yes, ma'am.
There is, hold on. There is nothing on that date.
Okay, does that work for, I know it's the Monday after Thanksgiving, so everybody will be rolling into the meeting full. But is that,
I'm pulling up my calendar, Madam Chair.
okay, thank you, sir. Ms. Boatwright, are you available that day?
I'm also pulling up my calendar. I'm thinking. Ay, ay, ay.
And it works for me that day. Is there a possibility of getting the meeting scheduled on a recurring day of the month and time? Because that way we can lock it in and to the extent possible, build around it.
I would be good with that. For me, Monday AMs are good.
How late in the AM is good for you?
9:30, 10, 10:30.
Yeah, the latest you could, because my problem is like, as you just saw, but clinics, when it starts, there's things that I can't, for the most part, I can kind of put things to the side and have a meeting. But when in the first hours of the morning, I get interrupted sometimes and I just can't.
Gotcha.
No.
What works for you, right, in the morning hours?
The later is better. I can do Mondays, the later the better. So like 10, 10:30, that'd be better.
Okay.
How about 10:30?
10:30 would work for me. Does that work for you, Mr. Dallas?
Yes, ma'am. Could you make it the fourth Monday?
The fourth Monday. Is that the 27th? Fourth Monday of every month works for me, I believe.
Except for in December.
Well, obviously.
So we will start this in November and then move it into the January timeframe.
That works.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Boatwright.
Same,
Yeah.
Ms. Dallas.
So then last item on here, we've got the future meeting dates. I don't see future topics on the agenda. So
What would you all like for as future topic?
we have the item number 3 that was dropped off today that'll need to be revisited.
So for item number 3,
Mhm.
when we say revisited, there is discussion as whether it should be with policy at all.
Okay.
So when you say revisited, are we going to discuss whether policy should have it, if there should be a rubric? Is that something that should come out of academics first, then pass on to policy?
Remind me how it was remanded to policy.
It came to policy through staff member in academics. So there is some discussion as to whether there needs to be. So I kind of think it needs to be cleaned up through academics if there needs to be a rubric. So offline, is that something we can discuss with the Chloe, Dr. Stratus, and you all to see if that's something that even needs to come to policy?
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Robin, just get with me on that one.
Yeah.
And then circling back on the items that we discussed today in regard to the handbook inclusion and potentially revisiting that motion from June of 2020. And there may be a need to put a public comments discussion onto just leave a placeholder for that one because we don't know necessarily what the full board's going to do.
And then supplemental materials, which I left that off from the agenda. So do you want that on the agenda?
Yes, ma'am. We need to visit that.
Okay, got you.
Yes, sir.
I would pursuant to the conversation today, I'm wondering if there would be any value to having a conversation about recurring illumination of segments of the coherent governance, the OEs, the ARs. Because the understanding varies by individual and varies by inclination.
Yep.
Define, I'm not understanding what you're asking.
Something like a, information session.
Like what is an OE and how does it differ from an AR? And
Yes, and actually go through all those different ones over a 4-year period or a 2-year period or whatever, so that there can be discussions without it being a vote. But people will be informed, forcibly informed if they participate, because it will be part of what would be sort of driving it into each individual. The thing that I hear and see is the volume of words is so great in the interpretation. It can really be a challenge because every person can sort of leave with a different interpretation. And so I don't know how to do it. I'm just saying maybe there's some way of doing it, whether it's a software package or whatever. But food for thought.
Yeah, I think
can I say something? Ask that more for clarification. The OEs, and for all board members, you'll get it updated as we go through this. But the OEs are your policies, and every board member has that book. In your new board orientation, the administrative regulations, those belong to the superintendent. So and those are online, but the board does not get to vote on the administrative regulations. Correct. They just present them. The staff presents them to you as information to letting you know that here are these changes, but they don't belong to you. So going over, when you say go over them,
yes, ma'am. And if I could, what I have in mind is just some format, and it could be digital.
Yeah.
Where board members basically sign off that they have viewed it. There could be a questionnaire at the end.
Got you.
So that it proceeds at the individual's pace, and recognition is given to those who go through every aspect of it, including administrative regulations, so that we know what the purview of the superintendent is vis-a-vis the board members. And then I think we could eliminate some of the discussion, because a lot of the discussion is basically bringing newbies like me up to speed. If I can use myself as an example.
No, and I have 100% know where you're coming from, because I very much at this point in my boardmanship had the same feel like, I don't know what we're talking about. It's, and I think it is simultaneously a little bit too technical and not technical enough. And then we had a consultant come in with, to try to realign, and that made me more confused. So I agree with you. I think that it is a very abstract concept. It's a good concept. I've read a lot about it. But it is not something that's easily accessible. And I think at this point in a new board member's career, you've kind of got the lay of the land. You're like, okay, so what are we actually deciding here when we monitor an OE? So I think that would be an excellent idea.
And you can make it very easy by having it as basically a test, a questionnaire.
Yeah.
That each board member has to go through and sign off on. I do that. I used to be responsible for all compliance, foreign denied parties list, Ribicoff anti-boycott amendment. And the only way we could make sure that every person had gone through it was to automate it into software, so that they had to sign that they had actually seen this and that they understood it. And then those people who didn't could say, hey, I'd like to have you convene a meeting and let's go through this in detail. I think it would make us a lot more efficient in our governance. Just an idea. Thank you.
That's a really good idea. If we can do just some very cursory preliminary work, Robin, on figuring out what kind of software might be needed to do some type of automated click-through test for board members, kind of like a training or onboarding. If you could just do a little preliminary work into that, I would love to bring that forward to the full board. I'm not sure when, but I would like to bring it forward, because I think that obviously is a project, but
Mhm.
something that would seriously save some time if we did ensure that the onboarding and training of new board members catches them up to speed. I mean, I know they're already drinking from a fire hose, but maybe this will help.
Gotcha.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Dallas, for the suggestion. Okay. If there
Ma'am.
is no other business to discuss today, I will close this meeting by unanimous consent if we have it.
So moved.
So move. Thank you, Madam Chair. Aye.
Have a wonderful weekend. Stay warm.
Likewise,
Bye, guys.
everybody.
Yeah.